This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 277.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. So last week we had Chris Bussing had me on his show. It was a live show, and he gave me permission to publish it, so I published it last week. And now I'm going to have him on my show. We're going to talk about his journey into account management for big companies like Google Cloud. Uh, he worked at Oracle. And I get a lot of people telling me, like, hey, I want to become an SDR because I want to be an SE. And that is doable, but it's not the best path forward. However, if you do become an SDR, there's a chance you can go into account management or be an account executive the same way Chris was able to do it. So I want to talk about his journey. I want to give people who listen to me who are SDRs a path forward, and I want people who work with account managers to understand a little bit more about how account managers, account executives think. So let's just jump into the show. All right, so we're recording. We've been talking for a few minutes, and I feel like there's a bit of gold that's being said. Golden, being the golden boy. Yeah. Let's just keep going. So Chris Bussing is on the show. We're talking about sales. I mentioned how I don't enjoy sales. Let's just keep going. Then we'll restart later.
So Ramsey, what were you saying about like why you didn't enjoy sales?
Well, you were talking about you're hearing someone saying about like make a plan, commit to the plan, and surrender to the outcome. As salespeople, I feel it's very difficult to surrender to the outcome because you're responsible for the outcome, right? Like it's something you cannot control 100%, but yet that's what you're evaluated on.
Yes. It's easy to tie our sense of self-worth to our performance, and that's something I struggled with a lot, particularly because I was successful. I got into a good university. I got into some good companies from a tech sales perspective, but I had a turning point in the pandemic when I got promoted into field sales at Google Cloud, and I moved out to LA. And let's be real, companies were bleeding cash. They were struggling, and I was not hitting the number. And most of my peers weren't, although there were some people that crushed it in the pandemic. So it didn't apply to everyone. And I really struggled, man, with grappling with not hitting my number. And I actually got very depressed. And it was an indication that a lot of my identity was rooted in my performance. Now, there's a positive to that, because when your identity is tied to your performance, there's a certain level of necessity that you're going to do everything you can to protect your identity. And so you're going to perform well because your identity is on the line. But fortunately, I went through what was actually a quite painful growth process to unravel from and let go of that tie to performance and evolve into a version of myself that is more compassionate and that actually measures success by simply taking action and crushing the plan.
So I love that. And that's how I've always thought. Like I like make the plan, I follow the plan, I commit to the action, I control what I can control. Yes. But the thing about sales specifically is that sure, yourself, like you can figure out like, hey, I've done everything I can. But we were talking earlier that like your boss is there.
True.
And they're not seeing everything that you're doing. Even if you're advertising everything that you're doing, they're still not seeing everything that you're doing. And their view of you is based on the results, not on the action. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And imagine my sales director, who's an incredible guy, he has pressure from, in this case, he reports to the CEO, and the CEO is just looking at numbers, and the investors are just looking at numbers, man. They don't know Chris Bussing. They don't know Ramsey Marjaba, and that they're amazing people and they're giving their best, and they don't know the conditions and the circumstances that are leading to maybe deals not closing like they could be. They just look at numbers. So, and that trickles down that pressure to the director or your manager, and it spills over onto you, and they're like, hey, like we need results. And that the pressure, it definitely can be a pressure cooker in sales. So it's not for the faint of heart, but man, do you grow a lot when you become the type of person that can manage that stress. And hey, we could go into how to do that, of course, but I am the type of person who is up for the challenge, but it's not always roses.
So you said, I pretty much agree with everything you said. And the thing about that is when it's time to let go of some people, I've seen it happen in a way that the CEO would say, or someone higher up say, we need to let go of one person, this amount of money. And then it's like, it's a free for all. Like whoever fits that number, like you're a number to them, basically.
It's tough. And it is, one thing I've learned in my career, as much as I love to drink the Kool-Aid, I was at Oracle, I was at Google, now I'm at a startup called Bespin Global. And I'm a loyal dog, and I drink the Kool-Aid. I tend to just be a positive guy. I love my peers that buy into the culture, but I've learned that these are businesses, and until you're running your own business, you have to deliver, and it's not personal, but you could be the greatest guy or girl controlling the culture, but you have to deliver, and you could, I've seen people let go that for years delivered and was a great employee. And it's just a reality of business. And that's why too, this is a whole different tangent, but I think it's really important to build your success on a Parthenon. A Parthenon is different legs. And so maybe you have your W-2 income, or excuse me, different pillars to support it. It's not just one pillar. So you have your W-2 income, that's one pillar. And it's a really great opportunity to think about how can I build other income sources outside of my W-2, like we're building. And so it's a whole different tangent, but just kind of recognizing, it's probably better to recognize this early in the career that these are companies and it is business. So there is, especially in sales, you're going to probably experience a layoff at one point or another in your career.
Yeah. So you mentioned W-2 income. For those not in the US, it's basically you're employed, you have a job, and then you're saying like find other incomes, whether it's through investments or through side hustles or whatever, which we have a full episode about side hustles. But also you mentioned that the CEO doesn't know who Ramsey Marjaba is and doesn't know who Chris Bussing is. Who is Chris Bussing? I guess we'll do the intro now. Who are you? What do you do? And how are you here?
Yeah, I mean, I think at my core, I love people. So I love the opportunity to connect with awesome folks like you, especially people like Ramsey, who are giving generously to others and wants to lift others up. So that brings me a lot of joy. I'm a chatterbox, and that's partly why I got into sales and why I want to be a speaker. And I found a career path in sales where I can express my love for people. I literally get paid every day to network and build relationships and solve problems on the same side of the table with customers who end up oftentimes turning into personal friends, which is really amazing. And I get paid really to develop myself as a person, because in sales, you're forced to pick up a phone and make a cold call to a stranger, which is very uncomfortable, and do other uncomfortable things like negotiating. And when you stretch beyond your comfort zone, that's where living happens. And sales has given me a path, in my case, to apply personal growth, mindset, and habits in the real world in a sales context. And that's spilled over in every aspect of my life. So Chris Bussing is a lover of people, a lover of personal growth. And I want to lift others with my words, and I want to connect people with opportunities to open doors. And I could tell you about, where I'm from and some of my accomplishments, but I think that's the heart and soul of Chris Bussing. And yes, I'm a chatterbox. I could talk and talk, but one sidebar is that listening obviously is way more important than being able to talk well and sound nice. So that's something I've had to manage and work on. And so that's a little bit of me.
All right. Well, luckily you're on a podcast where I'm interviewing you, so you get to talk as much as you want.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk.
So okay. In essence, you're a people lover and you like to help people. And I love the fact that you become friends with your customers. I try to do that as well. Yes. I'm like, I think last time we talked, you mentioned you're an extrovert, and I mentioned that I'm an introvert. So yes. I find it hard to always make friends with people, especially like customers that I may not like.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that.
I'll tell you this though, that's a good thing. Because why would you be friends with someone who you don't like? Like, you have limited time and you have a limited mental and emotional bandwidth. And so I feel like that is a good thing. And one of my challenges as an extrovert is that I can be a people pleaser. And sometimes I do spend time with like everyone, and I can't focus on my priorities, or I'm spending too much time with someone who isn't really in alignment with the type of person I want to be around. And so obviously I've managed that over time, but there's such a benefit to your qualities in being an introvert. And obviously extrovert comes with its own challenges.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think the reason you would hang out with people you don't like as a salesperson is because they have the purchasing power. But
isn't that interesting? Like that's, and yeah.
So I get that. How did you like? I'm just curious about your background. You were a salesperson at Oracle and Google. You weren't born that way. So how did you get in there to begin with?
Yeah, so I will tell you this. My dad is one of my biggest inspirations, and he was a salesperson himself, and he's an incredible networker, and he's taught me the power of really, he says two things: take care of people and make it happen. And I would say take care of people just means really get to know people when you meet them, remember their name, learn about what makes them tick, learn about their family, and find ways to bring value and take care of them. Maybe it's setting up, I mean, there's actually, so like, I'll open up a whole can of worms. So let's just keep it at a high level in terms of mindset. We can dive into examples if we want.
Sure.
Later. And making it happen is really, when you extend an olive branch to someone and offer to bring value and deliver on something, whether it's a solution in a sales conversation, or it's just someone that you met that you say, hey, I know someone who owns this restaurant. I can set up dinner for you and your wife. It'd be a great experience. Making it happen is having integrity and delivering on what you say. And so my dad always inspired me as a seller himself. And he was born in Norwalk, Connecticut. And then he decided to uproot and move to Naples, Florida. Actually, excuse me, Marco Island, Florida. I grew up in Naples, Florida, and he moved there not long after. And he sold timeshare. He sold something that no one really needs. And he was really good. And he got in at a young age. And so, sales is kind of in my DNA in a way. It's, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. And I say that was kind of funny, as my dad's nickname was Tree in college when he played baseball. He was a pitcher who threw like 92 miles an hour, almost made the pros. But so I think I had that like love for people and sales desire in me, and it came from my dad. And then I ended up going to a good university, Georgetown University in DC. And I was a good student, and I was fortunate to work hard and put myself in that position. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew I love people. I love personal growth. And I did have this, I guess, sales inclination in me. And I decided to, at a career fair, to shake hands with a guy named Sean, who was a recruiter for Oracle. And my roommate, who is, he's actually a Mensa genius. He is freaking smart. He's the smartest guy in the room everywhere he goes. And obviously was smart back then. He said, Chris, maybe you should talk to Oracle. You said you want to do sales. Tech sales is, really great. It's dynamic. You can make a lot of money. And so I had a little bit of a nudge from my roommate too, who, even though he's my age, he's like a mentor to me. And so again, I shook hands with Sean. I was very bold and confident. And I said, bring me in. I'm going to make it happen. You can hear the words of my father that I mentioned, what he would tell me. And I said that, and got in the interview process, and I did well. And I remember talking with Rashonda Grimes, who was a hiring manager, and I told her, I want to be great. And she said, I tell my daughter that every morning. So that's how I got into sales. I was fortunate to go to a good university. I don't have this crazy underdog story where I, was like working at McDonald's and didn't have I did go to a good university, and I had a lot of privilege and, of course, luck, and combine that with working hard, and I got to where I was. But that was my journey. And the last thing I'll say to tie a bow on this little TED talk here in tangent is that confidence goes a long way in sales. I literally just shook the guy's hand, looked him in the eye, said, hey, bring me in and I'll make it happen. And obviously that didn't get me the job immediately, but especially to entry level role like the SDR role, if you believe in yourself, that will translate. And so that was my journey into tech sales.
One thing I would like people sell themselves short. Like, I went to a good university. I mean, you're not the only one who went to a good university. Some made it, some are doing well, some are not. Just because you went to a good university, you were lucky, you still have to work for it, right? You still have to, it doesn't just fall in your lap. So I just want to say that beyond your father, and you mentioned to your friend that you want to be in sales, did any of your professors at university ever mention sales to you? Did they talk about sales as a skill or as a job?
You know what's interesting? I think we could use more of that in education, like more education around emotional intelligence and business skills. But obviously that is available, and there are universities I've heard of, like High Point University, that is like designed to provide education of real world skills. But the short answer is no.
Yeah.
Like I can't remember anyone in particular, any professors talking about sales. I was, Georgetown is a Jesuit university, and I was in the college and got a liberal arts degree. So I was Mr. in high school. They called me a Renaissance man, like a generalist. I wasn't going to be like a prodigy doctor or musician or something, but I was good at most everything. And Georgetown is a good school for that, for me to explore my interests. And so I took all the general types of courses, psychology, sociology, of course. Well, you know what? I chose economics as my major because it was what is a major that will facilitate a type of thinking that is helpful in any context. And I looked at the statistics that economics majors tend to make a little more versus other majors. So I certainly, a quick note, okay, as I go on this tangent, is that I think I did a good job, like not knowing what I wanted to do, making decisions that would set me up to develop a type of thinking and skill set that would serve me when I did figure it out. So economics is a major, sales is a career. I think it's one of the best careers for anyone who doesn't know what they want to do, but wants to develop skills and character that will serve them and income as they figure out what they want to do. If it's starting a business or even being a lawyer, my lawyer, I settled a lawsuit, and that's a long story. I had a freak accident at a bar, and it worked out favorably, but and that's a whole can of worms. But lawyer was in sales for 10 years. So to answer your question, though, again, just going back to the main point, no one in particular, from a professor perspective, mentioned sales, but it was people like my roommate, who is actually a mentor, even though it was my own age, that encouraged me to ultimately end up shaking the hand of Sean and really shaking up the rest of my future.
Which is very interesting. Like, as someone who went into engineering because I didn't want to talk to people.
Dude, this is so funny. You went into that because you didn't want to talk to people, and I went into sales because I love talking to people. I love how we complement each other.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Sales is one of the most important skills that people should have. Whether you're an engineer, if you want to buy a house, buy a car, buy a cake, whatever it is, there's always some form of sales that our whole lives are based around sales. And yet many people go through life and not understanding that
yes,
this is how you negotiate, how to anchor high, how to talk to people, how to share stories. I just find that interesting that we don't teach that in university for everybody.
Yeah, I would just say that it's not a best writing author, it's a best selling author. And what a disservice if you wrote the most beautiful book that could change lives, but people don't open the front cover. If you have a nonprofit that can really make a difference for children, and you know what, people, that's not going to be hard to sell. But the point is, like, even getting people to buy into giving donations is a sales mission. It's, being able to frame opportunities in people's world to make a difference, and contribute. Raising money to start your business, you're going to have to pick up the phone and call a VC or send an email. You're going to have to prospect to find that funding. And even, with our channels, you reached out to me, and I'm sure you reach out to others. People reach out to you to have you as a guest. By the way, I loved our interview. People need to check out our interview on my channel. You shared a lot of insight and encouragement. But that prospecting and the art of getting the meeting and getting someone's attention is critically important if you want to realize any type of goal or dream.
100%. And that's what I'm saying. Like, people should be learning that. I love that your dad was able to guide you into sales. And not many people are like talking about being lucky and all that. Like, my dad was a mechanical engineer who had his own business, and he never talked to me about sales. Like he would sell his services, but he never talked to me. He always talked to me about the technical aspect.
Interesting. And how did he get business? And maybe was it because he delivered such a quality experience that they came back and through word of mouth? Because I mean, there's something to be said for that. But
I mean,
what did you end up? Did you ever learn about how he was successful from a sales perspective?
not really. I never. So in Kuwait, when he was in Kuwait, he was very successful just because of the services that he did. He would find the first role. He developed relationships, and they would just give him jobs, and he would do them, and he would get more work. And then when we moved to Lebanon, he wasn't successful at all in Lebanon because it's a different kind of mentality where it's not just about the sale. Like he would sell his services, and then he would never get paid for it.
Oh no, that
Right.
is, and by the way, I've even recently I've had to be collections agents. I have an email in my inbox from a CTO at a tech company that it turns out they're trying to get acquired. And so they've held off on payments. We're like, come on now. So sometimes you got to play collections agency, and that is not
Yeah.
fun. It sounds like your dad had to do that.
Yeah, and that's part of life. Like that's also sales. Like you're trying to give them like we just did this
You
machine.
sold it, yeah. Yeah.
We are not going to deliver, or we're going to dismantle, or we're going to sell it to somebody else if you don't pay us on time or before we deliver. Right? He never had that. So, and I learned from watching more than I've learned from like discussing it with him. Like I've learned from watching him struggle and watching him get angry and have a hard time and a bad time. So it's just, and that's something that I wish he taught. Like he would talk to me about it beyond. He was pushing me into engineering. Like you
Yeah.
should go become an engineer.
You hit on something really important, which is one of the best ways to learn is through experiencing and doing.
Yep.
In your case, though, observing your dad in action and some of the situations that came up and how he handled it. And in sales, that is the best way to learn. So anyone starting their career, shadow calls. Who's going to get upset if you want to learn, right? Like you're an SDR and you set a meeting for your account executive. Ask if you can listen in on the next meeting to hear the discovery call, the demo. And so learning through observing and actual experiences, and ultimately, of course, you want to be able to do it in action yourself and fail forward and get feedback and learn. That is powerful. And it sounds like that's actually a way that you learned through your father.
Yeah. Speaking of SDRs, I mean, that's something you did, and it's also something you help people in becoming.
Yes.
So what does someone need, like as a prerequisite, if you will, in order to become an SDR to get, or even attempt to become an SDR?
You know what? It's cool that the SDR role is a great way to lower the barrier to entry to an amazing company because it's an entry level role. Now, some startups that are just building their unicorn startup, there's this one like ELT extract or data transfer type solution that I know of that they got a lot of funding and they're like, we need a founding SDR who really knows the tools and has experience. Like there are cases like that, but especially at big companies like Oracle, Dell, Salesforce and other big names, which you actually do want to work for, they have such built out programs and they have so many sellers that they can afford to take someone on and train them up. And so what you really need is not necessarily a whole lot of actual experience, but you need to demonstrate certain qualities that show that you can come in and be successful and you can be molded. And the number one thing you need, and a lot of this is character traits and things that can be developed or that you can choose to build in yourself, is coachability. It's so simple. The ability to take in feedback from your manager or from the world. The world gives you feedback. You make a cold call and you get rejected. You could think like, that's feedback. What did I just jump into a pitch? Like, why was that? And you can actually learn and improve. But that coachability and ability to take in feedback and optimize is foundational. And you're going to be asked questions like, tell me about a time you received a piece of feedback and how did you respond? Because when you are coachable, your potential is limitless. If you know it all, and you could be the smartest person in the room, but if you think you know it all, you actually kill off your potential. And you like being a know-it-all is actually not helpful in sales. So that should take some pressure off of us when it comes to applying for the SDR role. So, I mean, that's one example, Ramsey, is coachability, but you need to be able to show that you're gritty, you're passionate, you're able to persevere. You do need to show that you can pick up a phone and make calls. You can be creative with email outreach and get someone's attention. But these are all qualities that you could come up with stories from your life and show some proof points that you have these qualities. I will say one of the stumbling blocks that aspiring SDRs run into, especially when they don't have an experience, is that they don't have any cold calling experience. But there are ways to actually develop that. Like, there's companies like Glen Coco. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're a marketplace for SaaS companies and tech companies to connect with, people like us who can get trained up and certified and then make calls and then make like $500 for booking a meeting. So you're not a full-time employee for the company, but you get actual cold calling experience. You can invest in a coach. You could do, I have a coaching program and I'm going to be launching a self-paced course called Tech Sales Accelerator. You could work with someone like me to learn about the role and even get a certification. There's Course Careers, which is a very affordable option. That's an affiliate partner of mine. So, I tapped into a lot right there. And I'm a chatterbox. I could go on and on, but just to recap, it's SDR role is a way to lower the barrier to entry at a great company. And you really just need to show that you have certain qualities and character traits like proactiveness, courage, and grittiness that you have inside of you naturally. And if you don't have cold calling experience or relevant experience, there's ways to get creative and actually get some real world experience so you can speak to it.
So, like I've talked to people who tell me like, I want to become an SE, but first I want to become an SDR. And I know from myself, I don't know if I would be good at SDR. Right? Like I know how to reach out to people, but maybe I'll just hate it, for example.
Yeah.
Are there traits that when you talk to people and you see them and you say like, you know what, this is not the right thing for you?
Yeah.
Can you share something? What do you see in someone that you say like, you know what, do something else?
Yeah, I think that if someone isn't willing to get uncomfortable and like really doesn't like talking to people, or they're not willing to put their comfort aside and talk to people knowing that there's an upside in this path and that they could develop themselves, then that's obviously a big deal breaker. If you're terrified of rejection and failure, it's going to be a bumpy road. It's going to be painful. However, I would encourage those people to consider having the courage to try it, to use this as a tool for self-expansion and development. So they're capable. I think anyone is capable of selling. It's a learnable, trainable skill. You can feel me getting pumped up because I believe it to be true. However, if you're dead set and candidly have a fixed mindset that I don't like talking to people, I don't want to get rejected, I'm terrified, like obviously like it's going to be painful. So but those people could decide, I want to use this as a tool for self-development and to expand my horizons. Even though I'm an introvert, I realize, and I'm saying from experience, introverts can be the greatest sellers, and I know introverts who've made $1 million a year. And so that's one quality. Another is if you're too relational, which I am a very relational guy, but if you're not willing to actually have tough conversations, to challenge customers, because customers sometimes can be a little unreasonable and difficult, and they might you might be offering a solution that actually could make their life better, and they have rationalizations that aren't really founded in good logic, and it's just emotional, and you actually have to be willing to challenge them a little bit. You have to be willing to have messy, sloppy, awkward moments, to hold the silence, to drive a deal forward and create constructive tension. Some people don't want to ruffle feathers, and they're super candidly, I am one of those people. I'm a people pleaser at heart, but I at least was willing to put that aside. And so that's another thing, being way too relational and just like fixed on that and not willing to, again, create constructive tension. Another is being overly analytical. Now, I'm actually very analytical. And so, again, I've used this career myself to expand who I am. But if analysis paralysis is a thing, and in sales, like a bias for action is most important. It's going to get messy. You might, and if you spend like 5 hours writing an email, which I almost have spent 5 hours writing emails in the past, like you might never get a response, and you just spent 5 hours of your time writing that email, when you could send an email that like you put some thoughtfulness into it in 20-30 minutes, you might not get a response, but that also might get a response, just like the email you spent 5 hours on. So hopefully that makes sense. But being over analytical can actually, in sales, it can slow you down and it can prevent taking action. And okay, one final anecdote, like here's an example of why like over preparing and being overly analytical isn't always helpful. There was a CEO I was going to connect with at an IoT company, and I prepared this beautiful presentation based on their product that they had, a data V that was on their website. And I put so much thought into it. I really like prepared everything around it. And the first thing that the CEO says is, we've decided to pivot our business from a product company to a services company. Everything I'd prepared for and analyzed was out the window. And now I needed to dance in the conversation, be present.
Yeah.
And so another thing is, just to that point, you need to, in sales, like be able to deal with ambiguity and the chaos of change that, like that, like I had an expectation, the conversation went in a total different direction. Or what happens when Google which happened when I was there, decides to eliminate the inside sales force, and I was an inside seller, and said, hey, you have X number of months to find a new role. I got a promotion out of it. I was very lucky going into field sales, but things are dynamic. So yeah.
So you talked about a lot of different things that I want to touch on. But before we start recording, you said that your mom always used to say to you, progress, not perfection. And
Amen.
that just immediately came into my mind when you talked about
Mom.
Yeah. Perhaps shout out to Chris's mom.
Francie. She's 70 years old, and this woman is incredible. She beat cancer. And, my college admission essay to Georgetown was on her story and how she shaped me. And she embodies resilience, and she turned around her health, and now she inspires others. And at 70 years old, she is radiant and healthy, and she goes by Francie, which is basically embodying that youthfulness and that spirit, even at 70. So anyways, shout out to Mom. Love you, Mom.
Shout out to Mom. I'm glad she's better now.
Yeah.
That pretty much embodies the fact that, like, hey, don't overanalyze everything. Just get 1% better.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And then isn't that one of your principles? I noticed get a little bit better. Is it, wait, is that, or wait, hold on. Is that something that because I might be confusing it.
It's from Atomic Habits, and I'm sure other people said it, but
I thought you wrote Atomic Habits.
Yeah. I wish. But it's like basically just, I don't want to be perfect day one. I don't even want to be perfect day 100, because at that point, what's left? Yes. But I do want to get a little bit better every day, and you can't do that if you're expecting perfection. Like the thing I talk about, like people become sales engineers and expect to be great sales engineers on day one. But if you think about it, it took us like over a year when we were babies to learn how to walk. Right.
Dude, amen. And you know what? I want to run through an exercise real quick. It's like, maybe, okay, it's going to be hard to capture in the screen, but like reach as high as you can. Like, humor me. Okay. Yeah. Now, can you reach a little bit higher? Okay. Yeah, you got higher. Can you reach a little bit higher?
If I sit up, yeah, there you go.
Dude, okay. And if anyone did that in the audience, or anyone who sees this in the future, you can reach higher and higher. You're not going to get it perfect or right the first time. You're not going to reach your full potential the first time. You can always reach higher. So done is better than perfect. Just start.
Yeah.
And I actually heard that from a professional speaker. It was just a fun little exercise. It's so simple, but it's true. The first try will not be perfect. It will not be your best, but start trying and improve.
The hardest part, and I sent that in an email I put on LinkedIn, the hardest part of any journey is to actually start. There's a guy by the name of Brandon Turner. He's one of the people who started working early on in Bigger Pockets. It's a real estate site. Cool. And at some point he started doing jiu-jitsu because they had Jocko Willink on the podcast. Jocko Willink challenged him
That is a good guest. We should get Jocko on.
We should
That is
try. Yeah, we'll definitely try. I actually reached out to him like a couple of years back. I never heard back.
quick note. Okay. I want to make sure you remember that, but persistence, man, with enough persistence, the impossible becomes possible. And that's a sales lesson. And dude, you're going to get it today. Anyways.
Yeah. The trick is like persistence, but I want to grow and I want to have enough, enough reasons to invite them on, right?
And I looked at your channel, and congratulations, you have such a good audience. Like you've grown a great community here, and you're just getting started. So it's no joke. It takes work to get to where you're at in terms of how many subscribers. And so congrats on that. Anyways, I interrupted a thought though.
So going back to that, so when Brendan Turner started jiu-jitsu, someone in the jiu-jitsu, like they were talking to someone who does jiu-jitsu later on, and they asked him, hey, what belt are you? And Brendan Turner said, I'm a white belt. And the jiu-jitsu practitioner said, the white belt is the hardest belt to get. Basically,
that is a good analogy.
Yeah. And I wanted to go back to something you said earlier, relationships. You don't want to be too relational. But the way I see it, if you see, do you have siblings?
I have a sister. Shout out to Kira. I call her Kiwi. She's the best. She's amazing. Yeah.
We're inviting the whole family on today. Yeah. But if you see your sister doing something wrong, would you tell her?
Yes, that's loving. That's loving to actually, like, if you're more committed to their success and growth than a need to be a people pleaser and not ruffle feathers. Yes.
So, and exactly that.
And she does that for me, by the way. She is incredible with feedback.
Yeah. So when you're talking to customers, and we're talking about relational, like, you can't be too relational. I think you have to be relational, because if you really care about the customer, you'll find a way to let them understand that what they're doing is wrong.
Yes. And let me explain, like, I am a relationship guy, and what I notice is personal relationships and customer intimacy, where you have, like, literally, like, the customer's kids, and their favorite bottle of tequila, and maybe send it once in a while. You're golfing. I mean, there's one CTO I have an amazing relationship with. We're golfing Friday, and I've been back he's crushed it. I'm in the back of his Aston Martin with the wind hitting my face, having an amazing time. And I've met his family. We've gone to comedy shows. The relationships are literally the long-term are so important, like, to success and win-win relationships, personal relationships. Imagine this CTO, wherever I go, will be my customer. That is unbelievable.
And wherever they go.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. So you are absolutely right. Relationships are number one. What I would say then is maybe we could reframe it, like, being afraid to ruffle feathers when appropriate, especially when it's committed to helping a customer. Like, that you've already demonstrated the return on investment, the total cost of ownership, the dollars and cents on why this makes sense. Talked about how it could make their life easier and help them sleep a little more at night, if, like, say it's improving the reliability of their systems or offloading their workload. And in those cases, coming from a place of commitment to their success, I'm just saying it's important to be able to challenge them and sometimes bring a perspective that is contrarian. But you're right, man. The relationships at the end of the day are so important.
Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking. Like, I have that same problem. Like, if I'm talking to a customer and I'm worried, like, they're saying something that doesn't make sense, and I'm worried about ruffling their feathers, if I go back and think, like, it's in their best interest, like, I would be doing them a disservice right now if I don't help them fix the way they're thinking. I mean, it sounds condescending. I understand, but sometimes you see something they don't.
It's like let's role play. Ramsey, I understand that, like, the way you're looking at the situation is XYZ, but candidly, I'd be doing this, I think, as both a disservice if I didn't push on this hot button a little bit. I really think that if you do things this way, you're actually going to save more money. And here's why. And I think that you're actually going to be able to make an impact in this way. That was so hypothetical. And it was not perfect, but maybe an idea. And you can give me your feedback on how to. There's, like, a way to mindfully challenge, like, acknowledge a perspective, it's valid, and then maybe say, like, this is coming from a place of from a good place, and boom,
Well, for me, I learned something from a gentleman. His name is Doug Brown, and he's the
Okay.
author of Win-Win Selling: How to Handle
I
Objection.
love that. Yeah.
And basically, the main part is that, like, if they're saying something that doesn't make sense, that's an objection. And the first part of, like, handling objections is not necessarily telling them why they're wrong. It's just trying to understand where they're coming from. So that's that for me. And as an introvert, I find that this is very easy. I just started asking questions like, why are you thinking that specifically? How did you get here? Right? And like, and how what I'm saying about this, how doesn't it help you? How does it help you? Right? And I help them. I personally, I never feel able to tell someone you're doing this wrong. But if I ask enough questions, I may get them to see it my way as well.
You know
It's
what?
less
I
challenging.
love that. I love that. And there are different approaches, but I agree that's actually the first step, is get to the source of the objection. Like what, and put yourself in their shoes, like, and make them feel heard and understood, like, and do that by asking questions. Like, what makes you think that? Or you could say like, oh, we're definitely not doing this. Like, oh, you're definitely not doing this. And that's a little uncomfortable, but it's from Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. You're mirroring, and then they'll start talking. But however you want to do it, like, I love that, Ramsey. And I'd say to anyone out there, the surest bet is to start by just being curious and asking questions, and then, be willing to, if needed, challenge and propose a perspective.
And for me, I find that easier. I know a lot of salespeople who do it the same way you do it. They're more direct, and they're able to do that. I'm just uncomfortable with it, right?
I get it.
Found another way.
And it could be interesting for you to play around with it. And there will be friction. I will say, at a high level, the challenger sale is one of the top methodologies in modern B2B solution selling. And solution selling, as you know, yeah, okay.
I hate
that, and it's a data-driven, based on a large study. And I actually interviewed Matt Dixon, the author, and I had some technical issues with him then. We lost connection for a minute at a time, like 3 times. So kind of, but it was a good conversation. And it was actually on his new book, The Jolt Effect, which I won't open up that can of worms, but any potential sellers or sellers, check that out. It's a good one. They looked at the archetypes of different types of sellers and put them in molds, as you know, Ramsey, but just in case the audience hasn't heard of this. And there's the relationship person, there's the problem solver, the hard worker, the lone wolf who does their own thing, but does crush their numbers, and the challenger. And of course, the challenger ended up on top. It's the name of the book. And the challenger is willing to ruffle feathers, to teach the customer something new about their market and problems facing their business, to tailor the conversation. I think we can agree that when I'm talking to you as Mr. VP of Engineering or CTO, you might care about certain things, and certain aspects of the solution might be more relevant to you that I need to focus on, versus talking to the CFO who cares about dollars and cents and different things. So I tailor him or her. So teach, tailor, and take control. And that's what we're talking about here, is being able to, challenge, provide a perspective that's grounded in good, logic and data and reasoning, and to also taking control. Another thing is prescribing the process and how it will go, like really owning the buying process and journey as a trusted advisor, instead of defaulting to the customer's, what they think should be happening in terms of the process, because oftentimes they don't know how to buy. Anyways, so I love the line of questioning, and that, I'd say empathy is the gateway to influence. That is, honestly, it's not just that it's comfortable for you, it is very effective. Also, when appropriate, and by taking the time to understand and showing empathy, I think you earn the opportunity to challenge if you need to.
Well, I feel like if you have a good relationship with someone, if you, like they say, like, relationship sellers are not great, but if you have, and I heard an interview of someone who was in marketing for the challenger sale, and they were going to call it the new relationship seller.
Oh, really?
That's what I heard. You might have to I
am a relationship seller at heart. And to your point, I know I'm interrupting you, but there was a deal I've been chasing for over a year with a cybersecurity SaaS company, and I've met with the CEO consistently, like over the past, handful of months. I worked my way to get that relationship. We met in person. He pushes me off a lot, and he keeps pushing off the deal. And this deal is going to help him start saving money. And like, wouldn't you want to save sooner than later? And I've connected him with, they're on Google Cloud. I work with Google AWS. I'm at a cloud partner. I connected him with the field CTO at Google Cloud, who's a good executive technical resource. I opened some doors for him. And I built a relationship, and I sent an email on Monday, and I need to follow up actually today after this call. I was like, hey, Bruce, I know you're a Bostonian and you probably appreciate directness and transparency, but in a moment of vulnerability, I'm getting some pressure from my leadership on this deal since we've been in pursuit for over a year. And I was hoping you could help me get this over the edge. I know you said that we need another meeting with the CTO to talk through some technical things, but I just want to assure you, you mentioned security concerns. For these reasons, there's no security concerns. Like you mentioned some change, the level of effort to make the billing change. Well, I won't get in the weeds of the nature of the specific deal, but just to put you at ease, like it's going to be minimal lift on your part. It's not going to distract from your goals. So I really look forward to getting these next steps locked in and your help getting this deal, closed so that we can get growing. I don't know if I said get growing, but at least we can get to work.
Yeah.
Right. But the point is, like, and that was over an email, and I'll have a direct conversation with them in person. But I just tying back to your point, I've built a relationship and pursued them over a year. I've earned the opportunity to challenge in a respectful way. That wasn't aggressive.
No, I would have done way differently. I would have done it way differently. I probably lost the deal.
How would you have done it?
Hey, sir, you're obviously not serious enough about taking care of your security stature. So I guess at this point, you're not interested in this solution. Thank you so much for your time, but I have to move on from this opportunity because we've put a lot of investment into it and we're not getting our return on it. Take care.
I like that. And it's funny because in this case, I'm being a little more relational and you're being more direct.
Yeah. I've always been blunt, right? Like,
yeah. And that's good. And so I'm like, and here's a little more context, and maybe it sparks ideas for the audience, like, because it's just a real world conversation. But as a Series A cybersecurity SaaS company or any SaaS company, right, they're trying to scale. They have some degree of product market fit, and they're trying to grow their top line revenue. And so, of course, the CEO, who's the ultimate seller, especially at a startup, is focused on winning more business and more deals. And he's got some monster deals on the horizon. They went to this security, well-known security, what's it called? Not a trade show. That's old school, but like Google has their big Next conference. And so they're sponsoring, they're making big moves. They're all focused on growth, and they're also building a new release of their product. So I get it. He's like, Chris, I want to do this. He said that in past conversations, but we need to be heads down on growth. And so what I'm trying to challenge is like, I am focused more on, my deal is more on cost savings. Now it's a tough economic climate and it does help. It frees up cash runway to allocate towards growth. But that's a little more context that he's told me verbally, we're going to do it. And eventually the deal will drop. And it'll be the longest pursuit I've had in a long time, like maybe a year and a half. But I'm at a point where, though, it's like, as we mentioned before, I've got pressure from my manager to close deals, like, and deliver more short term. And I'm at a point where it's like, hey, this is not going to be that disruptive like you think, Thierry. Like, I can mostly manage this for you in terms of the transition. Let's get it going. So that's a little more context. So I don't know in this case,
100% get it.
I'm not your line I like, but given that context that I have,
it's different.
I have good faith that it will happen eventually. So yeah.
So, well, here's the thing. I've been working on a deal for a long time, and I got him because we have hardware. We worked our way down. Like, he wanted extra discounts and I couldn't provide him. I didn't want to provide it. And so I said, you know what?
Preserving your price.
I just found a refurbished unit for you. I can put it on hold this has been like a year in the making. I can put it on hold for you. But we have to do it in like a couple months ago. He's like, fine, all right, yeah, perfect, I'll do it. And then before the month end, I went and grabbed lunch with him. And he told me, like, he's being pressured by his bosses to get something else ready so they can get a PO in. from their customers, and then he can buy my stuff.
And that's a great what we call a black swan, maybe what you didn't know you didn't know. Like you're getting to the source of the objection and what's actually going on.
So you know what? Fine. I know you're not getting the PO this month. I will work with the team to make sure it's on hold for you for another month, which is this month. But now, like, I haven't heard, like, I emailed them, like, hey, how's things going? Did you get the PO? Did you get what you need? But I haven't heard back.
You know what? Go ahead.
Just to finish that, my next email is going to say, like, hey, I understand that you're facing these things. Unfortunately, I cannot hold this unit any longer until the end of the month. If you can't do it, that's fine. When you're ready to do it, I'm going to have to go find another refurbished unit for you if we have one available. So, like, I'm still being respectful.
I like that. And what you're doing is like loss aversion is a big motivator. And so pulling away resources, hopefully this actually gets them moving, because that's actually your time is very valuable, and you've got other customers. So hopefully I'd be curious to know and follow up, how this goes when you kind of threatens, not the right word, but maybe I'll use it, threaten to pull away the resources and opportunities.
Well, I don't have, like, it's not like I'm saying anything. It's like I cannot put it on hold for another month, right? Like, I've already promised the team that does the refurbish that I'm going to sell.
And you move mountains, like that's a little exaggeration, but you made an effort on behalf of the customer to, and they're not holding up their end of the bargain, and it's got to be a two-way street,
Yeah, I mean, like, at least I want an email back, right? I'm not asking for much. Just give me an update so I can update my boss. Right. But yeah, so
you know what, at Oracle, when I was an SDR, there's a guy, Tate Ewing, that's a good friend, and now he's at AWS, and I'm going in their office today. I co-sell with them, and maybe I'll see him. But he had an amazing email when customers stopped responding called like the winds of change, and it was this dramatic email like of, hey, I haven't heard from you, and I'm not sure if it's because of something that happened and shit, this, that. And so anyways, I'll have to dig it up, and I'm not going to do it justice because I don't remember it, but there's some very creative emails that people come up with, and sometimes they're humorous, like, and it gets a response. And so, yeah.
I mean, I use like Chris Voss's email from Never Split the Difference. Like, are you no longer interested in this?
What does he say? Sorry, say that again. Are you
it's a simple email, like one line, like, are you no longer interested in this service?
Oh, interesting.
And the response is like usually, no, we are. We just don't, like, timing is not working out or whatever. And then we re-engage at that point. That's we're almost at the end of our hour, and I just wanted to ask, like, you said you went from SDR to sales. What is the general, like, what is the normal career path for someone who's going into SDR?
The beauty of the SDR role is, as I said, it's one of the best career paths for people that don't know what they want to do with their career or life, because you can get into the SDR role and follow the typical path that I did, that you get to account executive, where you're closing deals and running a full sales cycle. And I often recommend, and what typically happens is going to an SMB account executive role, where you're not jumping to enterprise, like monster deals that are very complex sales cycles where there's a lot of pressure from leadership, but you're jumping in the SMB space where you're dealing with small and medium businesses that usually it's easier to get to the decision maker. It's the owner or CEO, and it's more transactional and formulaic, and you can get at bats. You can get actual more deals under your belt to, develop that closing motion and work on your discovery skills, and your presentation skills, your demoing skills. You can work on your, negotiation. And, there's actually quite a bit, like there's a big jump and a lot of skills that need to be developed beyond the SDR role, which is setting meetings and creating interest. Like maybe at a mature company or in certain roles, you might be given more qualification responsibilities as an SDR. I know at AWS, some of the SDRs actually run their own first discovery calls. So they set meetings for themselves and qualify, budget authority, need timeline, and things like that. So the point is, that's a typical path in sales, right? Is you go to like maybe a SMB account executive role you're closing. Then you move up to mid-market, which are bigger deals. There's probably more decision makers, more complex buying cycles, and eventually enterprise account executive selling monster transformational deals if you're at the right company, where you make deep six figures. You can even make $1 million a year. I haven't done it, right? I'm not going to pretend like I've made $1 million a year, maybe one day, but the best of the best make that much money in enterprise sales. So if you're money motivated, if you're competitive, and you love people, and you love that, like being responsible for outcomes and having a CEO mindset where you set a territory strategy, you're helping manage and empower your customer engineers and sales engineers, you're bringing in your leaders, you're quarterbacking resources and being a strategic, trusted advisor, that's a good path for you. However, at Oracle, I had an SDR, Lena, who was very smart, and she did well. She did enough to hit her numbers, but she realized she was very analytical. She got her MBA at Duke, actually, very smart. She went into an analyst role, right? And so that was more of a business analyst technical role. And she ended up shining and doing really well. I've seen SDRs go into HR, SDRs go into marketing. So the point is, you can get in the SDR role to lower your barrier of entry at a great company, develop some great skill sets and qualities,
and relationships
along the way. And relationships, yes. Oh my gosh, relationships are one of the most important things in life, and one of the biggest keys to success. And you can use that then to maybe you get more clarity, and like as long as you hit your numbers and do a decent job and you build good relationships, you can pivot into a lot of different types of roles. Right. You could become a customer engineer. I've seen that too. Obviously, you could speak better to what's required, but if you're in at a company and you do well, and you communicate your goals there, and maybe network with the customer engineering team, they can tell you what's required and what skill sets and technical certifications you need.
So. Yeah, I mean, I tell people, like, don't become an SDR to become an SE or a CE, but if you are an SDR, you can become one.
That's a good way to put it, right? Like, you're going in with the thought that I want to see if sales is going to be my career path.
Yeah.
And of course, but just know that there's flexibility. And like, so you're not like punching a ticket, like I am now stuck in sales for the rest of my life. You're going to develop skills and connections and character that will serve you in whatever you want to do.
Nice. All right. Well, Chris, as proven in our call together, first one, we can talk to each other for hours, but I do have a call that I need to jump on pretty shortly.
Oh, okay.
So let's just start. Let's like the way I end the show is with what I call the not so fire round, which will end in a fire round succession. We'll see how that goes. These are the same 4 questions I ask almost every guest, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. I am going to change the first one because you've already stated. The first question is usually, what do you love about what you do? But you already stated that. So I'm going to ask, what was your favorite subject in university?
My favorite subject in university, there's a couple I'm thinking of. I love psychology, and that's partly why I love sales, right? Understanding, what makes us tick as human beings? Why do we act the way we do? What makes us happy and fulfilled? And that's been a lifelong pursuit that started in a psychology course and has only been catalyzed by my journey in sales. Because you need to understand your own psychology and manage it, and others' psychology in order to be successful in sales and in life.
Nice. I like that. All right. Second question is, what would you consider is your superpower?
My superpower is being a connector. If you want to get a job in tech sales, or you want to get venture capital funding, or you're a startup looking for a PR firm to help, or you name it, right? Like, I'm throwing things out there. I have built a network of people that I can connect others with to support them in their goals and open up doors and opportunities. So I love people and I love building relationships. And so my superpower is being able to understand someone and what they're trying to achieve, or even like an experience they want to have, and say, there's a good chance I might know someone who can support, or someone who knows someone who could support to that end.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. I asked this question to almost every guest, and I feel like you actually thought of this before. And because almost everybody else, it's like, oh, I don't know, what is my superpower? But I feel like
Yeah, no, I'm clear, and
you're very self-aware.
and I would say we could throw that in there. I've always been self-aware to a detriment sometimes of being like self-deprecating, but it is powerful. Like when we understand ourselves and our wiring, including, I know my weaknesses, man. I've certainly got some good weaknesses, which sounds funny to say. It's like that, from that sense of place of awareness, we can consciously choose to create the life that we want, where we maximize our gifts, maximize our happiness, and manage the things that sabotage our happiness and success.
I like that. All right, the third question of the day. You already mentioned the Challenger sale. Is there another book or resource or website or anything that you would recommend for people who want to be going to either SDR or into like full account management or account executiveness?
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of books, and I have it on my website, chrisbussing.com. Shameless
That's the
plug.
resource. That's the
Yeah,
resource.
yeah. And so I have like 6 books that will shape your sales career, but I'll throw out a few. You can't teach a kid to ride a bike at a seminar. This Sandler sales methodology. They have a 7-step submarine, and that shaped the Oracle sales methodology and many of the sales methodologies in the industry. It's rooted in transactional analysis, which is a branch of psychology. And you're going to learn about how to set upfront contracts to set a context for engaging in customer conversations. You're going to understand really how to ask questions to probe deeper in customer conversations to uncover pain, because customers buy emotionally. And you're going to learn a lot of other great I don't want to say tactics, because selling is more about being understanding people and about like strategically approaching things, but you're going to learn a lot about to develop your own sales process. So you can't teach a kid to ride a bike at a seminar. And a quick note is that metaphor is like, do you really go to a seminar or read a book to ride a bike? You learn through doing and experience. And it does kind of touch on that in the book. Right. So one other book is, it's not necessarily specifically for B2B tech, but it's a top B2B sales book for hunters, which is the SDR role, and account executives, where you need to reach out and prospect. It's called New Sales Simplified by Mike Weinberg. And I've actually interviewed Mike on the channel. Nice. And he also has a thing that says the not so sweet 16 pitfalls of business development. And it touches on some of the ways to know like if sales isn't for you as well, which is interesting.
Okay, good. So I'm on your website. You have a bunch of lists for different things, so people can check that out. chrisbussing.com.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Last question of the not so fire round, Chris. Is there a habit you're working on today to improve in your personal or professional life?
Yeah. I'm trying to get up a little bit earlier to cultivate a space of I guess, this was coming to nothingness, like a time to meditate and to create before I jump into the work of the day. Because sometimes I immediately look at my phone and emails. I look at Instagram or did I get more subscribers? I'm immediately reacting to the day and other people's priorities. And just diving into work, do. And eventually, I will burn out anyone who would burn out. So cultivating, and I consider a spiritual practice. I would never project my faith on anyone. I'm raised Christian, right? Like I believe in God. But I'd encourage anyone to develop some type of spiritual practice, and just kind of, and maybe it's simply meditation, sitting and being present in the moment, anchoring your breath. And so I want to cultivate that space, like, before I start the day, and protect that space, and then generate and create the intentions for the day that I want to create. So being more proactive and because I've gotten busy. Life gets busy, especially when you're like Ramsey Marjaba and you're succeeding in your role. You're helping lift others on the path. I've experienced some similar success, so I think that's important.
I like that. That is something I need to work on as well. Chris, we're at the end of the call. You mentioned Instagram. You have your own YouTube channel. Where can people reach out to connect with you and follow you and see your progress?
Yeah, I've really focused most on YouTube, and one thing I love about YouTube is I have amazing guests like Ramsey on the channel, and I've got some actually famous keynote speakers, professional speakers, people that are on CNBC coming up. As guests, I've got comedians. I've actually really been I'm using my sales skills to reach out and get amazing guests. So it's not just me preaching from a soapbox, but you'll get, shorts every day, little tidbits. Oh, here's some negotiation tips. Here's how to lead good teams. I know that sounds random, but a lot of sales and leadership stuff and personal growth stuff. You'll get weekly long form videos, especially if you want to get it in tech sales, like, oh, here's 30 questions to prepare for in your interviews, right? And then these actual interviews with amazing guests like Ramsey. So check that out. That's the
Forget about Ramsey. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but forget about Ramsey. Go check out Chris's rap song.
Oh yeah, I mean, and yeah, I dropped a rap music video. If anything, I'll make you laugh at least once, I guarantee it. And now, hopefully you do now. I set a high standard, but I want you to laugh once, and that's at the core of the channel, man. I just want to encourage people, and I want to even offer like mindset tips that could be helpful, even if you're not in sales. So we've got that. We've got the website. I will be launching a course soon. And here's the other thing: LinkedIn, right? Send me a message if you want to connect, and I'm happy to have a conversation. I love to do just free 15-minute calls to just learn about people, connect. And if you want to get into tech sales, of course, I could offer a few ideas.
Yeah. So, by the way, if people who come to me and wanted to be SDRs, you should just go to Chris. He's the guy. I don't know much about SDRs. Chris is the guy for that. So, thank you, Chris, for coming on. This was great. I appreciate you spending the time with me today. So thank you.
I mean, I got chills, man, to be connected with someone like you that is of a similar mindset, elevating people. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for having me on. It was a really great opportunity, and I had a great time, man.
It was my pleasure. Looking forward to more.
All right, same here. Let's do it.
All right, and that's the end of the show. This was a bit of a longer episode, so I'm going to cut it short. Thank you for listening. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Do all the things that people ask you to do in general if you feel up for it. I don't like to ask for that sort of things, but you ask, you don't get what you don't ask for. Therefore, I'm asking for it. So if you have any questions, if you want to get into SDR, I would highly encourage you to reach out to Chris. His links are in the show notes. If you want to get into sales engineering, if you want to improve, most importantly, as a sales engineer, let me know. Let me know how I can help, because I've helped many people do exactly that, and I'm looking forward to helping a lot more. That's it for me. I hope you enjoyed the show. With that, I'm signing off.